Welcome to the Bougie Black Brother Network. Good evening and welcome to Millennial Money Management. I'm Michael, your bougie black brother, and my co-host here, Chaz Jenkins. What's up, Chaz?
What's up? What's up? We got a good one here, folks.
We got a really good one in store. We have two special guests with us today.
Two dose. Well, you heard one before because she be talking on the low.
Yeah, she's one of the regulars on the low end side.
Yeah, she be in the background.
Contributor. She's a contributor. How about that?
Yeah. So we got the lovely Rachel. Want to say something? She got to speak.
Everybody out there
on the interwebs.
Rachel.
Okay, right.
Rachel.
So Rachel has a friend. I met her. She's really nice. Latoya. Latoya, can you tell us about yourself?
Hi, my name is Latoya Mixon. I am currently in finance, and generally I just like talking about finance. I like talking about personal finance. I like the opportunity to help low income to mid income people figure out their finances.
Outstanding.
Okay, so the first thing about Latoya is I met her in New York. And if you know anything about New York City, Mike, you used to live in New York, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and New York is expensive, right? You both can agree.
Absolutely.
So I was just curious, Latoya, from your perspective. I mean, when you look at a lot of cities, a lot of the desirable places to live, I mean, are expensive. You know, New York, the Bay Area, Chicago, Atlanta is definitely getting up there. Mm-hmm. Los Angeles. I mean, how do you? I mean, just from, living in New York, how do you deal with, the price and the rents and all of that?
Well, the first rule is never pay full price for anything, and then you go from there. So when you talk about rent, food, any of those things, there's usually a side door into a situation. For me, in particular, I used to work in real estate when I got out of school. And so when I did that, it was property management, and I realized that a lot of these luxury buildings in New York, it's like mid to low income housing. So if you make around $40,000 a year, you can live in an apartment that's worth like $3,500 for about $900. So it's called the 80-20 program. So each of these new buildings, they have to set aside 20% of their apartments for low income people. So you literally can get into a $3,500 apartment for $900.
Whoa. So you ready to move, Jazz?
I mean, if I can get $3,500 for yeah, well, why not? So she touched on one of the things that I was thinking about, just for me in general, is like for I don't have a good word, but for things that are just important to live, you have like, renting, you work in a leasing office, work in real estate. If you want to know about food, or if you like to eat out a lot, working in hospitality, things like that, or hotels. I mean, how did you get into working in real estate, and what are the big things you learned working in that industry?
So I got into real estate actually when I was in high school. I used to work for a real estate broker, and she used to do property management on the side. And so working in her office, I kind of learned some of the tips, tricks, and then I realized that, I mean, it's a full industry. There's a lot of money to be made in it. I went to college for marketing, and as soon as I graduated from school, I went into property management to try to get back into the real estate side. And it was literally, they interviewed at my school, and I interviewed probably in January, and I started in August. I was there for 4 years, and while I was there, I learned how New York City works. So everyone thinks of real estate, everyone thinks of high rent. and all of this, but there's a lot of programs and laws out there to protect the consumer, protect the renter. Things I've realized, like if it ever came down to it, and it's a choice between, like, especially in New York, if you have to choose between paying your rent and eating, always eat, because it takes about a year for a landlord to kick you out.
Very good advice.
Wow.
No, I mean, it's like, so it's those little things. It's like, I learned that when I was working there, I learned that the system is not, one, it's not made for
Right.
us. And so you need to figure out the loopholes around it, because if you try to go a straight line, you're never going to get anywhere.
So, Latoya, I got a quick question, because you seem kind of like you live this. What made you so interested in, say, finances is just something that I like doing, or was it just something that just came to you like, I just like this? I don't know why, but every time I get my hands in it, I just like that. Where did that actually originate?
So a piece of it is nature. I've always liked money, like counting and all of
Okay.
that. And then as I got older, I just got tired of seeing broke people. And so that, I mean, no, it's really, it's like, you look at
But you broke hands.
Wait. Yeah, I was like, I relate to that a lot. Get your broadcast up out of here.
Okay.
the paycheck to paycheck living, all of that is most of the time is preventable. And then there's just a few things in my life that kind of just kept me on this path.
Okay.
So, when I was young, I would just count. Like, I would have, like, when you collect quarters or whatever, like, I would spend afternoons counting the money. And then as I got older, I just started paying attention to what's going on. And like how someone would drive a Range Rover up into the projects, and you kind of like, well, why? What?
Right.
Like, how does that make sense? And then a few years ago, I ended up going to South Africa, and I realized that they did the same thing. So,
Oh, wow.
In the shanty
But-
shacks.
it's like, it's not the projects this time, it's shacks, but it's a Lexus going to the township, and you're like, wow, okay, so Black people are the same
Right.
everywhere, cool. And then
Oh, don't. Donald Trump is gonna love
no,
that
no,
quote.
no. I mean, it's not a bad thing. I'm just saying, like, I love us to death, but it's like, okay, so we're the same everywhere, but then we're also looking at, we're very we're consumer focused, and it's a lot of consumerism versus there's not a lot of teachings around investments and buying into real estate, or just straight up just saving your money and not saving it in a regular bank account, but putting it somewhere else so you can gain a little bit more interest. There's like the whole concept about credit cards being free money. It's
Right.
all of that. And when I realized, like, we really act the same wherever we go, because we were never taught any different.
Exactly. So
And
go ahead.
going,
So the reason I find that fascinating that you went to Africa and say, damn, they're doing the same thing. But what I found, even when I was living in New York and everywhere else, a lot of us, our people, African Americans, blacks, whatever you want to call us, we say, why should I invest and save? I may not live that long anyway. And they use that type of premise to say long-term investing isn't for black. That's for the people who's going to live longer. And have you ran into that kind of mentality other than the lack of education? Because I run into both. The lack of education I can at least talk to, but the side that people just say, I'm not going to live long and I'm just going to try to get everything I can right now. Have you ran into it?
so I think that comes from the lack of education.
Okay.
It's to me, it's one and the same. It's a way to rationalize your current behavior, but I don't think most people don't I mean, some people might not think they're gonna make it past 25. Okay, but cool. But once you're 25 and then you close to 30, like, at some point,
You
like,
have to stop it.
like that whole, I'm just gonna die young,
So-
like, that's not your reason anymore.
Oh, the get rich and die
Now,
trying. Yeah.
they're going to be more honest with themselves and say, you know what? There's a limited amount of resources, and I just want to just sit here and enjoy my life, and I don't really care about leaving anything for my kids. Then I feel like that's a better conversation because that's what's really happening.
Right.
But just the whole, I'm gonna enjoy this while I'm here. I don't think anyone really believes that.
Right.
Like they might say it, rationalize, but they don't believe that.
Gotcha.
So that makes me think of two things. One, we're kind of seeing more women getting into senior financial positions like chief financial officers. And second, me and Mike have this question all the time, or at least I do, in terms of like what makes certain things sexy, like what makes finance and investing
Insurance.
and budgeting like attractive. Yeah, because for a lot of women will say, and I want to ask you, they don't get the opportunities to break into senior financial positions. And on the other hand, how do you also attract more people into these areas, both personally to have better budgeting skills and professionally, just into high finance?
Honestly, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if these are people who are in like these professional finance positions, because I know that's just professionalism. It's the same as asking like how do you get more women or minorities into marketing or any other field. It's just something you do at work. When it comes to finance, and there's different levels of finance. So you have corporate finance, you have wealth management, you have all these different things. When it comes to saying, how do we get into these fields? It's one, do you have an aptitude for it? And then two, are you willing to sacrifice for it? And I think that's literally every single profession. Like as soon as you get into this whole corporate America situation, you ask yourself those two questions, and then you figure out whatever path you take. As far as personal finance, everyone can do it, should do it, being sexy or not. I mean, like I like to be able to eat. I like to be able to live. I like to, you know what I'm saying? Like I like to not have to ask someone to borrow $5.
Right.
So that's sexy. Being able to eat is sexy as a mug, because it's like,
I want to eat good. I don't need to ask for that. Yeah, but and so I think with Chaz, because we go back and forth with it because we just finding we can talk about it all day long. And
how can we get to listen? Yeah. Hey, Latoya's on this podcast. Hey, listen, she's talking about finance and she was in leasing and real estate. I'm like, I want to listen to that shit. You know what I'm saying? You got these, the main people who need to listen are the folks who just, you know what I mean? Like how you saying, the folks who pull up in the Range Rover in the project. It's like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what are you doing? Those people who we want to reach, but we're obviously young professionals. They're going to look for certain, for knowledge. But folks who need it or who are, less fortunate. Yeah, it's like, man.
So, Latoya, I'll give you an example. One of the examples that we did, and we got a lot of listeners, is we just threw out strip clubs and finances. Mm-hmm. We had a lot of people downloading that. But while we was talking about it, we was talking about how if you go in, you budget your money. So we had to slide in something other than, you should just budget your damn money. What is the issue? But we attracted them on one end and just brought it on there, because I always tell Chaz, I said, everybody ain't as smart as you are. Everybody will never be at a point to think that makes sense. So you always have to alter that to get them to digest it differently. And I guess, we always looking for something else to kind of get people to say, well, okay, I guess I will listen to it.
Yeah,
I hear you. I think there's a natural shift happening, and I really think it's because of hip hop.
Ooh.
So if you look at Jay-Z, he started out ratchet as hell. And then now, 20 years later, he's trying to be refined. He's talking about.
Wait a minute. He's got old too. He got kids and shit. he got
He
married
is
to
old. He is.
person.
But here's the
No,
deal:
no, no,
you still
no. If you fight in the
well.
elevator, I think you got to change up a little bit. I think that's the rule.
You think
Anytime,
that's
I think it was a combination of getting old. His step, what is it? What's Salon? This, what's it like? His sister-in-law.
Yeah, Solange.
Solange?
Yeah, yeah. If your sister-in-law fights you in the elevator, you gotta be positive. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, you have a slight point, but here's the thing: is like when hip hop was young, they didn't have anyone to look up to, saying it's not just about the chains, right? So young, old, everyone is listening to hip hop. So now hip hop got a little older, and they speaking about, you know what, you can buy your chain, but also let's do this investment, and then this is how I'm moving my money. And so I feel like yes, he's old, but he's schooling some of these young ones
Mm-hmm.
and they're moving different. Like if you look at what's that kid's name? The one from Cali, like the weird rap.
Nipsey Hussle.
No, not Ken.
Oh,
Vince.
Vince Staples. That's my
Staples.
man.
Yeah,
Vince
Staples.
Staples.
Vince. So like if you,
What's he doing?
he's just out there. Like he's out there talking sense. Like
Oh, he's being
Okay,
normal.
he's a normal rapper.
I mean, but no, like we had Cash Money for a long time. So now,
You know what? Yeah, yeah.
now
I see what you're
we're moving
saying.
into
So the error,
that
yeah,
direction. And I feel like that
yeah.
is what's going to help trickle down to the people.
Okay.
So, I mean, you can sit there, you can talk about the strip clubs and all this other stuff because, you know, budget your money as you will. But it's like at the end of the day, it's when you see your people that you look up to
Mhm.
making better decisions and moves, then that is what's going to trickle into your life.
Right, like Jay-Z said in this song, he was already saying like, hey, you know, why am I gonna buy Belvedere when I could be buying?
I took personal offense to that, by the way, but
I did too.
I get his point.
Now, yes, but not 2 years ago.
So I just did a music review on who was it, Chaz and Nipsey Hussle, and one of the things I wanted to bring out in that because they just listening to them rap, but Nipsey Hussle has a partnership with blockchain and cryptocurrency, and he's
Yep.
pushing that. And I had to mention it because
Yes.
that's the sexy thing that rappers and performers are jumping on. So if there's a financial something to build on, you got to start. And, you know, the people that, you know, young people are looking at, people are saying, I got dollars, but look, this is a different way of saving and your financial situation. People like that has to say it. And to your point, hip hop has transcended everywhere. So if you start seeing like fiscal old and young, people are going to say, I guess that's what's up. Then I'm probably going to have to do something like that. So I wanted to at least at a minimum mention that and not just saying, yeah, track 2 with Kendrick Lamar was pretty good. And hey, by the way, you got to respect this guy. This is what he's doing on top of just rapping. And so I think you made a good point, even though Jay-Z with his old ass is doing that, but he's built up so much money and he's like, I ain't got time for it. So I'm going to do something. But the younger people who's doing things like that, you're right, that can have an impact. I just don't see it as of yet, though.
No, but here's the thing, like on the side, because even like Nipsey Hussle and a couple other ones, they be talking about how Jay-Z is low-key mentoring them. You know, so it's just
Yeah.
it's trickling down. Like, you know, the 17-year-old might not care about Jay-Z, but he's listening to his little proteges.
Yep, that's true.
And so something's about to pop off into where it's just a better situation, you know? So I have hope. We'll see how it goes.
And would you say this applies to? It's not really about race, more so it's like a general age group, like just
Nah, it's race.
kind of shit. Oh, is
Damn.
that-
She didn't parse those words, I guess.
okay, all right.
No, so I say that because I live in New York. It's the most diverse city in the world. I grew up in Queens, which you have Queens is like a super segregated borough, but it's the most diverse borough in the United States. So you see everyone, right? And when I say it's race, Black people move different. They move different because, and I'm talking about Black Americans specifically.
Right, right.
We move different because we didn't have the information. And we've been in survival mode since the beginning of time, since we got here. It's straight survival mode.
Right.
And so you can't teach your kids what you don't know. But my Jewish friends, their parents are, like teaching them about the investments and saving and all this other stuff from a very young age. I have even Hispanic friends, it's a lot of them, like you might look and it's like, oh, it's a lot of them living in a house, but guess what? It's a lot of them saving and it's a lot of them buying that house. And so now they have home ownership. We move different. And so because our parents aren't necessarily ones that are able to teach us how to move in this current society, because you pass down that survival mode, like shit, I can survive anywhere, right? But the question is, can you flourish? And I feel like other people, when they come from other countries, or they bring with them certain lessons in being able to flourish and just like just simple common sense money management. You buy cash instead of using credit, or things like that, versus I don't necessarily know if we're taught those things.
And it's a discipline factor too, because we have the lack of discipline because what's being presented in front of us, the shiny things, African Americans always going for that, where the immigrants that come in says, I have to build from that. Like you said with my Hispanics friend when I was in New York, all the Puerto Ricans was like, look, we got to get this together. We're going to have to get this store. Let's buy the store. The family works at the store. They pass it on to the next family, so on and so on. The Africans that show up, they all said, until I can build enough wealth, I can bring my, and then so on and so on and so on. But you're right, we've been in survival mode, and some of us haven't got out of it because we don't think there's any other way other than surviving.
Well, I don't want to only just focus on like the people who look tiny though, because one of the major reasons why I really also wanted Latoya to be able to express her story is because she's very aware of historical things that have happened in Black society, like townships that were Black that did do those types of things. So I'd like for you to share that too as well, Toya, like your educational background being at Howard, and then how some of the ideas you have about Black township ownership and things where there were communities of Black folks who did try to do that, but because of systemic reasons were either taken away, and so we couldn't build those things that we were trying to do.
Well, I don't think I need to expound. I think you did a very good job on that.
Well, you went to Howard?
There you go.
HBCU in the house? Okay.
Bison, So yeah, I did go to Howard. Did learn. I had a better education about what it is to be African American and what society has done to us to kind of put us in this situation. But I don't necessarily know if the education is much different than anyone else. All you really have to do is pick up a book. So, it's real. It's like I started listening to books on tape. So in the past couple of weeks, I listened to Souls of Black Folks by W.B. Du Bois. And he basically is just giving, in that era, he's giving his viewpoint of what Black people are going through. So I think it was a little after Reconstruction. He talks about how we were first promised the 40 acres and a mule because, as you know, we were farmers. forcible farmers, but farmers nonetheless. And the government said that we would, have our own acreage to farm. But that didn't happen. And so a lot of them end up becoming sharecroppers. And then from sharecropping, you go into the industrial age. And then the question is, well, how do you train these people? Do you train them to just be your servants? And so that's why, like, we look at a few HBCUs. So Tuskegee, for one, Florida A&M is another one where they've started out, it was industrial skills, it's farming, it's, all that. Now they've grown to be more engineering and, different.
North Carolina A&T, Aggie Pride.
Exactly. All those things, they taught you to be workers in some capacity, educated, skilled workers, but workers nonetheless. And then you have other universities that were more liberal, and they set out to create all aspects of society. So if you wanted to be a farmer or an engineer, be a farmer engineer. If you wanted to be a teacher, be a teacher. So it gave you more options. But no, Rachel is completely. I'm sorry, I completely lost my train of thought. But I'm just going to end it with Rachel is correct. It's a lot of systemic issues that have held us back. And she knows because I called her the other day because I'm trying to get her to go on a tour with me of these African American towns. They're actually there's a few designated towns that are still standing. They're not thriving, but they exist where, they're designated for African Americans. So kind of like the Rosewood, but there's just a few other ones. And it's a lot. It's when there was segregation, we did have to work together. And when we did do too well, someone came in and tried to break that up. And you can see that it's historical. It continues to happen.
We're good with that, though. And the thing is, and I think what hurts the most is, there's so many of us trying to educate each other. And it's almost like a losing battle. But I tell my wife, I got to fall down, but I'm always going to get back up because I know who I have to pull up with me, because I'm not the only one that's falling, because there's someone that's already down when I fell. So I got to pull up, and then I got to pull them back up with me. And if we don't continue to do that, then we're just failing as a race, because then we go back into that selfish mode. And then we're back to being consumers instead of builders. And like you said, we're creating engineers, and then they're kind of restricting us in those engineer fields. And that's where the tech industry is having so much use too, because they're revealing that, oh, y'all want to keep that small boys clubs and that. We're going to restrict the women because they only got there because there's quotas that needs to be made. But that's never the true aspect, because, we're going to work extra hard because we know how y'all see us. But we don't get the credit for that, but we should just never give up. And I appreciate that, because, being educated in our HBC, because a lot of my family went to Howard and Hampton and all in the Virginia, that area. So they've always sat me down and just taught me when I was coming up too. So even though I didn't go, it was like, you're going to learn your history and we're going to get you there. So I do appreciate that. But outside of that, I think, and you can tell me if you do it or not, but I found the partnerships. Like you said, you have Jewish friends. I have a lot of Asian friends now. And I'm getting the influence from them to say, so how do you move in this way? Because I'm moving, but I'm still hitting this wall. Show me how you move. So how do you, with finance, how do you partner with those people and then take that and then make different moves for us in that way? Or do you? Sorry.
I don't think I do.
No, that's fine.
No, here's the thing. I like having good conversations. So, with my friends, we'll talk about things, but it hasn't got to the point to where we're actually partnering. these conversations are side conversations, very informal, very, I kind of get to see how other people are moving, and then I make adjustments
Okay.
based off of that. Like I look at different cultures, how they function, and then I think to myself, well, what would be the best way to do this? And so I kind of move that way. So I don't necessarily think partnership is the right word. I study it. Just by being where I am and just seeing how things go.
Okay.
Financially, when you think about going to HBCU, would you recommend other people of color, especially women, would you recommend they go to Howard or these other places?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that full question.
Oh, I'm sorry. And I was asking, in terms of your experience going to Howard, would you recommend other um, minorities, especially women, go to HBCUs?
So you mean not specific minorities? You mean like all just non-white? Or do you?
No, well, black people, black
Oh,
people. I'm trying to be politically correct, low key, but it's not working.
no, I just want to be, I just want to be real specific. Uh, I definitely recommend it. I recommend women, men, whoever else. I think what to me and my friends who've gone to HBCUs, what's special about it is the fact that you are the majority. And that's something that
Mm,
you don't get to be any other time in your life. You have sometimes 4 to 5 years to really just grow into yourself without having to
mhm,
focus on external issues so much. You don't have, like, for me, I have natural hair, and I remember when I was in high school, I went to private schools my entire life, and then I went to Howard. And so you go from being one of the only to the majority, and it really is a breath of fresh air. And that experience, I feel like everyone should have it because just the growth you get without having to explain yourself is amazing.
mhm. So what was yeah? So what was that journey for you personally in terms of coming from the private schools and then all of a sudden, you're coming into this, you're a majority early in high school, you're working for a broker, now you're in this place. What was that experience, that journey, and how did that help you to the person you are now?
I mean, clearly it was amazing. It was the journey itself, it was everything that I could have asked for, but it wasn't like, oh, you go from, like all white and then it's just all black. A lot of the people who are going to HBCUs are in the same situation. So it's, like these are people, everyone is from the diaspora, right? So you get there and then you're automatically hit with how diverse black people are. So you have Black Americans, you have people from Trinidad, from Jamaica, from Haiti, from France, from London, like literally from Nigeria, like all across the diaspora. We're all on this one campus. So for
Mm,
me, it was like that was the best education because I was able to see how diverse we are as a people. And I didn't have to answer like the basic questions. Like no one was asking to touch my hair or, like just those things. And I think that shapes you as a person because you don't like your guard isn't up. So I know that when most times if you're the minority, no matter what it is, like if you're the only woman or one of a few women or like one of a few black people or Asian people or whatever, when you walk into a cafeteria, you look for your like you look for the people who are like you, and that's who you tend to gravitate towards. But when you go to a place where you're not the minority, then and everyone looks like you, now it's personality based. Like you're my friends because I really like you.
right, right.
I can't.
Yeah, versus when you're at work, he's like, I'm gonna go hang out with Steve, even though Steve be tripping. He's a black dude,
Right.
so I gotta choose.
Like
Yeah,
Steve
you don't
get
gotta do all
several
that.
passes
He's the black
because
guy there.
Yeah, it is what it is, but yeah, Steve be
versus at an
tripping.
HBCU, there's no need to give a pass. It's like I like you or I don't. Period. Like like personality.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. I mean, so in terms of just from a financial aspect, would you say like the investment it helped you land into a good career path?
For sure. So I can't speak to all HBCUs, but I can speak to Howard in particular. Their recruitment is amazing. So we have like all the top 500 companies are coming to recruit. I I was in an honors program, so like JP Morgan, they took us to
So you smart.
to
You know what? You know what? I'm gonna be a hater. I'm a hater right now.
So I mean, I didn't work there, but like they sponsored the program that I was in, and they, like they sponsored us. We all went to London for a week.
No,
You have
that's really good.
Johnson and Johnson is coming in. You have like literally all the major companies.
Hmm.
They're coming to recruit at Howard in particular, and it helps.
Okay.
I don't know if this is the case. I feel like now corporate America has tried to shift to more diversity of thought, but when I was in school, it was they're looking for diversity. And what they would do is they would go to a diverse campus and get diverse candidates, and they didn't have the option to say, oh well, this person's not qualified or whatever. We were all qualified.
Gotcha.
Right.
No reason, and we were qualified and we were ready, and there was no reason that we couldn't compete against the Harvards, right?
Okay. So let's go with that. So let's say we'll just talk about postgraduate, just some scenarios. So postgraduate, whether you're living in your hometown or you moved, you get a job, you get an offer. Well, first of all, let's just talk about that. So you're in school. I mean, what was your journey from, okay, I'm a student and then getting your first offer? Or did you have multiple offers? How was that first transition from student to, full-time working adult?
Okay, so the transition was hard. I'm not going to pretend like it wasn't. But the transit, I take anything out of it. I think the transition between student to full time working person is hard for every single person who's done it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. Like it's one.
Yeah.
So
So, I mean, were you hitting the career fairs? Like, were you being recruited?
how I got my job. So
Yeah.
it was easy.
What? Oh my God.
Wow.
We're in the property management. I didn't go into, I didn't go into banking or
So, okay. So that was the one where you got interviewed in January and you had a job in August.
yeah. Essentially, like they literally came to campus. But the way it's set up, I can talk, I guess, a more general experience versus my own. But the way it's set up is that you have all these recruiters coming on campus, and then like they have the portal and the website, so you just upload your resume. Recruiters, if they want to speak to you, you call them for an interview, and they just do like mass interviews, and they pick whoever they want to go on to the next round. And so the process itself is pretty simple. As a college student, like it wasn't. I don't think any of us had to really be on these job boards trying to figure out, like how we're going to do, and then send our resume to, like the robo HR person, and like we didn't have to worry about that. Like our resumes were being seen.
Okay. And I mean, after that, are you someone, do you tap into the alumni network for your, whether for entrepreneurship, like, hey, I'm an alumni, invest in my ideas, or for networking, like financially, has that been a factor for you?
It hasn't. It needs to be. That is.
Okay.
No, that's on my to-do list. So admittedly, networking is not my strong suit. And so as I get older, I realize how much of a skill it is. And
Well, I have to imagine though, Howard has to be deep in New York,
Yeah,
right?
no. So there's definitely
Okay.
there's a large network, and there's people I can reach
Okay.
out to, or if I do need something, I do reach out to certain people, but I definitely don't do it as much as I should do it.
Gotcha. Okay.
I put her on that one.
Oh, okay. Rachel pipes in with the. Okay.
That's why I said I wanted to do better.
Okay.
We're a
Okay.
work in progress,
I
guys.
mean,
That's all.
yeah. Okay. So, I in school you get an offer. Basically, the recruiting, the school kind of handle a lot of the recruiting process. So as long as you, show up and do what you need to
Mm-hmm.
do, that got handled. So you get the first job. Now after that, let's talk about, you're in your first job. When do you think, how do you plan a transition? How do you plan a shift? Do you stay for a promotion? Yeah, like what's going through your mind in the first
So
job?
the first day of the first job, I said, "This is not for me."
Damn.
So I ended up staying there.
Wow.
I ended up staying there for 4 years though, because I like my coworkers and my manager, and I ended up learning a lot about like self and all that stuff. But no, the first day, like legit, I don't know. I feel like everyone knows when things just it's not your path. Uh, Whether you stay or
Right.
not, like that's your decision. But so I thought about transitioning at the very beginning. I didn't for a while just because I don't know, like my life was easy. And when I say that, I mean because it's real estate, because it's New York City, and because at that time I was working in
Right.
the it was the biggest real estate deal up to that point in New York history. So it was like, it was a lot of shining lights, and I ended up moving in there. And so I walk a block to work. They're paying for my cable. I have free parking. Like,
Wow. So okay, that brings up an excellent point. I mean, if you're in a good comfort zone, do you have an incentive to get out of that?
right. And I think that's where everyone needs to personally just kick themselves at some point, because while it's comfortable, if you're not walking your path or growing, then it's not for you. You have to go. So how
Hmm.
like my personal transition was, I was there. I was like, okay, I was like, at some point, I realized I have to give all this up. And I just went back to school. So I resigned. I gave 2 weeks notice, and I did a full time MBA program. And so,
Oh,
and then
okay.
from there, I got into corporate finance. So,
Now, question, just especially for, women listening. Really, that's for both people, really. Well, men and women. Why? Because I always debate this with people who think about going back for an MBA program. Why not go part time work so you have those 2 years experience versus go full time and then not have any work experience for those 2 years?
well, work experience is relative. So if you worked before you actually go into your program, that 2 years, that's just you biding time. Now, I wouldn't say work an additional 2 years to gain like depending on what you're doing. So if you have a promotion, and so sometime within that 2 years you get a promotion and you realize that this is the path you want to stay on, then that's fine. But a lot of people actually go back to get their MBAs to switch careers. So you work in
Right.
an additional 2 years in whatever company when you know that that's not what you want to do. So if you're working in finance for that 2 years, but you really want to switch to marketing, that's not going to help you get there. Now, I will say going to school part time it's beneficial because your company is probably paying for your school. Um,
Right.
like the cost itself is less. But if you're a career changer, I don't see I don't necessarily see the point except for the financial
Well,
aspect of it.
my case was while I was in school, I was able to start the transition. So I was able to get internships and actually start being able to transition into a different industry. So by the time I finished, oh,
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
you worked while you were in school?
Yeah, yeah, I was working, and again, it was half of it was part time, but some of those jobs was I was just able to get experience in IT. So by the time I finished, I was like, boom, I was able to transition into information technology versus go full time and
Okay,
then
no, that's
switch.
I
You
agree
know,
with you 100%. To me, I'm looking at that. That's more of an internship. You should definitely do an internship in the field that you want to be in. So, like,
yeah,
makes
at least
sense.
one, at
What I
least.
was talking about is if you decide that you want to transition into something else and you believe that school is your path, but yet you're staying in the same job while you're in school and you want to do something else, now that to
Right.
me is a waste of, I mean, it's not a waste of your time because, you're getting paid, but as far as the trajectory of where you want to go, I don't know, I don't necessarily know if that's going to get you there.
So yeah, I do. Rachel doesn't like this, but I have a personal system called "Get Your Ass Up Out of Here," and it applies to both yourself and others, internal and external. So when people are tripping, you'd be like, you need to get your ass up out of here. So if I'm in an environment where I'm like, you know what, it's time for me to leave. These folks tripping. So it's like, you just look around and be like, you got to simplify it. So someone might be like, well, I'm not going back to school, but you just might. What are the reasons do I feel like I need to stay? Like in your case, I mean, you was getting a lot of shit, free parking, cable, and whatnot. Well, shit. Well, yeah, motherfuckers be lucky to get a free lunch at some of their jobs.
Damn, dude.
Shit. So it's kind of like for a lot of people, it's just to me, it's just so obvious. Like you need to leave, but whether it's comfort or putting the work in to change, is family, yeah, family situations.
Kids.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I didn't have any of that. So it's like, I mean, weigh your options. So I'm a firm believer in certain things. I'm a firm believer in always having an FU fund. I am
Yeah, let's talk about that because what do you mean for the people who don't know? What's the FU fund?
exactly what it sounds like. Fuck you. It
And then
Yeah,
you can go. Yeah, there you can go.
now
right up my alley.
it's literally it's your ability to walk away from any situation and know that you're gonna be okay. So whether it's your job, whether it's your husband, whether it's anything, it's you
Mm-hmm.
walk away and know that you are fine. So depending on your situation, I'll just talk about generalization. It's saving. It's saving. It's looking at your paycheck. It's looking at your expenses and seeing where you can put a little bit away. So if you think that you're paycheck to paycheck, but yet you go to Starbucks or McDonald's or any of those places, then maybe you switch out one of those meals and eat at home. So like your $5, $10, you literally put that away. And that's the most dire of situations. If you are a little bit more comfortable, so like let's say you just graduated college and you move back home and you're working, there's no reason for you not to be able to put away a good portion of that. Let's say you moved away, you live on your own, but your company has a bonus. So even something like that. So if you literally strapped paycheck to paycheck, but during Christmas, that company gives just a little bit of a bonus, whether it's $2,000 or $5,000 or even $1,000 or $500, like whatever that extra is. Instead of using that money
Mm-hmm.
to buy, a whole bunch of Christmas gifts, then you take that and you put that away, and that's your FU. It's literally it's finding a little room in your day to day, or even if you get like a windfall that you wasn't aware of, and just putting that away to the point to where you feel comfortable. Now, once you get a little bit more established, you look at how much. For me, I say a year. I say your FU fund should be about a year worth of living, and I say that only because I know a lot of people who, things would happen at work, whether they left voluntarily or they were forced out, and they would literally be unemployed for a year. And I just use that as my basis. A lot of the professionals, they say 3 to 6 months. Um, but I say just keep saving and don't. And the whole point of the FU fund is not an emergency. Like, so I look at it as this is my get out of jail. Like if anything go down, I know I'm good. But I'm gonna exhaust every other resource before I touch that money. And I think that's the difference. So I feel like a lot of people, they'll start saving, but if something comes up that they could kind of hold off or they can figure out a different way to do it, they'll use their savings instead of trying to find another path. And I say, don't act like it's not there. Act like it's not there until that last hour. And like that mental shift, I feel like that's how people will start getting that money together.
Now, I want to shift gears just a little bit, just because of what's going on in the news with Me Too and everything. And you kind of talked about a little earlier with women in the workplace is just more so about who's interested, who has aptitude. But I was just curious from your perspective, all these things going on and all the stuff in the news. Do you feel like it's? I was just curious from your take on all that, and just stuff in the workplace, especially for men who may not be aware or have a good idea. Can you just speak into that a little bit?
So honestly, I love the Me Too movement. I think I'm not going to use the word brave because I don't think it's that brave.
Yeah, like real talk. I mean, Rachel, I know you wanted Latoya to come on. Been a great conversation. Anything else we need to talk about that we forgot?
No, she great education for me, Latoya. So thank you. So normally I'm a big talker, but I enjoyed a lot what you was talking. When I'm hearing things that I like to hear, I am very quiet.
Oh wait a minute. So wait, I get a return invitation?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. There's a sequel. There's a sequel.
No, but we really thank you. Thank you for your time. I know it's late too, but we really thank you. Thank you, Rachel, for recommendation for her to be on. And I'm hoping people understand that education is so key into making good decisions. And a lot of people say, well, I got the intuitive factor. My intuition says that no, be educated and make really educated decisions. And you got a lot of that through a lot of things that you said, and that you shouldn't have excuses because there isn't not really. You can open a book, you can hear what someone clearly tells you. Stop buying Starbucks. You buying Ventes twice a day, and at the end of the week, you can't pay your bills.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Now, look, Latoya, this might be a topic for part two, but I know you, like you said, you went to South Africa, correct? And so I did like a couple of weeks, like maybe 3, 4 weeks in China. And China copyright laws, they don't care. They'll bootleg anything. And we may have to talk about the idea of, like, again, you're in marketing, so branding, imaging, and like in New York especially, I know there's these are these little back rooms where people sell the knockoffs and all that. And I'd just be curious to see if people know the difference between real and fake. Someone spending $1,000 on something versus $20. You know what I mean? So just
The average eye is not going to catch it.
but just the idea of branding and why people do it. I love
I mean, I'm like, yeah, like that's a whole different podcast because I can go on for an hour about that. But
yeah, I'm curious just because
especially in New York, it's just like, and you have those people who are like, there's no way in hell I'm going to buy a knockoff because I want to have a certain caliber of brand, and I purchased that for that reason. Whether they have the money or not. But normally when they do have the money, those people are not going to want to buy a knockoff. They want the real thing, and can very much tell when it's not most of the time.
Okay, no problem. So again, thank you so much, Latoya. I really appreciate your time. Like I said, honestly, I'm a talker, and you just drop some things, and I'm going to get a chance to listen back at it. So we definitely would love to have you back on, and we appreciate your time as
no
well.
problem.
And Rachel, you need to have your separate mic next time, if you don't mind.
I actually like being there in person because I know my voice. So
Yeah.
go to the studio.
Yeah, you're going to be an active member. How about that?
Exactly. There you go.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you, and thanks everyone for tuning in to M3 Millennial Money Management. Thank you, and good night.
Good night.